Welcome and happy Halloween. Elan's putting on his best scared face. We just watched Smile, my wife and I, the other night. So we're going to talk about that. So yeah, happy Halloween, everybody. This is, well, I guess when you're watching this, will be past Brad and past Elan talking to
Yeah.
you now. But we won't know if you're going to comment or anything. So, well, we will, because one of us will be in the live stream chat.
I mean, we
Even though
both will.
we
Yeah.
both will. I think you have some things going on that you may be delayed or you may have to leave early, but we'll be in the
Yeah.
chat the whole time. I will be, at least, talking to you guys. So yeah, it's like we're here, but we're not. And that's just because we know people are busy and we know people have kids and trick-or-treaters and things like that, you may like to hand out candy or whatnot. So yeah,
Happy
we're going to be
Halloween.
happy Halloween. Yeah. So, and fitting because, we're going to talk about our favorite kind of scary movies, horror movies, scary games. I have quite a few memories of playing scary games. As That's kind of gonna be my claim to fame, not claim to fame, but I'll probably lead that conversation because I've it goes way back to like the Sega CD days, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah, which I still have my Sega CD, believe it or
Nice.
not. Yeah. So I don't know if it works, but I still have it.
Because isn't the Sega CD, you have to have the Genesis as
Yep.
well?
Yeah. Now they
Yeah,
did
because
have
it
a
like
Sega.
connects.
I can't remember the name of it. They did have a Sega system that had the Sega CD and the Genesis combined into one unit.
Right.
So you had the cart in the back and the it's going to come to me at some point, and then the Genesis unit itself was like all contained in there, and then the CD tray was in the front, and it was like a flip up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I don't think that you could use the 32X, which was the Sega Genesis add-on that slotted in the top and
I
turned your
remember that.
16-bit system into a 32-bit.
Yeah.
It didn't really.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but it was kind of cool. There is a I don't know what channel it is. And I can't remember, but there's I saw some videos of how the 32X and Genesis. I see we're already getting off topic, but I saw how they kind of rendered each, and you can do that yourself. Like if you just put the output from, like, you don't connect the two, so you just play like the 32X output, you could see, okay, this rendered like all the characters and like the HUD on the screen, and then the Genesis rendered the background. So it's kind of cool how they like leveraged that.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
But you did get better audio with the 32X, so that was nice. But anyway, yeah, we're gonna be talking about that and just having a good old time. If you're here, we
Welcome.
welcome. We even add a little pre-record thing up there, so you know that this is pre-recorded, so you're not having to deal with
Yeah.
thinking we're live. If you're like, they're not responding to my comments, what?
They're not responding to me yelling at my laptop and or phone or
Yeah.
iPad or desktop
Yeah.
computer.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's gonna be a fun conversation. We're probably gonna keep it a little shorter than our normal thing, but we'll see like where the time takes us. But yeah, I think you can still do super chats and super stickers, I think, if you want to. Not required, but always appreciated. So I was
That'll
gonna
go
say,
towards our Halloween candy budget.
yes, there you go. There, we'll put that up there. I was about to put the general question thing up there like we normally do, but I was like, probably type out an answer. But yeah, so I think I want to kind of start this by talking about kind of our background in terms of like how we kind of got, like, I love scary movies, and I think a lot more goes into making a effective scary movie than most people think.
Mhm.
It's not. I think it's probably harder to make than like a drama or something, or a comedy. Like, comedies are still hard to make, but like
Yeah.
coming from like a filmmaking background myself, it's like, yeah, there's a lot of planning that goes into how they're going to scare you, you know.
Yeah.
And it's not as simple as like, oh, there's just going to be a jump scare here. No, it's all like pre-planned out when it's effective.
Mhm.
Uh, there's a lot of jump scares in I think one of the Insidious movies we just watched. It might have been chapter 4. Or
How
not,
many are there?
5.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so we ended up watching all of them. I had only
Yeah.
seen the first.
Mhm.
Um, and what's funny is they get progressive, like the first 3 get progressively more cheesy as like each one
Uh-huh.
goes on, and then the 5th one, the Red Door, I think it's called. I actually thought it was pretty, like, in terms of like cheesiness and stuff, it was not cheesy like the first
Oh.
3. I actually, and it had probably the best mix of all of them, save for maybe chapter 3. Let me
Mhm.
rephrase. It had the best Dolby Atmos mix out of all of them because the other ones, some of them didn't. They just had like DTS, Master Audio 5.1.
Mhm.
I sent Elon a link earlier to the car
Yeah.
hit in chapter 3, which we were playing it at like minus 10 dB,
Mhm.
and when it made both me and my wife jump, and I really don't like physically jump most of the time, but it got me because like we just
Yeah.
didn't expect it because and that's where it kind of goes back to like them planning it out, right? They're
Mhm.
distracting you by this character's kind of waving at the girl, and then all of a
Mhm.
sudden it's just like smack. Now when you think about it, you're like, well, that car could have saw her standing in the street for like a mile and a half down the road.
Yeah.
Okay, but then the movie wouldn't happen and whatever. So it's a movie. Um, there was also a movie thinking about like things like that. There's a movie called The Orphanage. It's like a Spanish speaking film from I think Guillermo del Toro produced it
Oh
around
yeah.
like Pan's Labyrinth time. And there's a there's a moment in that movie where this character gets hit by a car, and the lead character's husband is like a doctor, and he goes to give her mouth to mouth, but then when like she goes up to the lady's like missing her jaw. It's like, well, how are you giving
Oh.
mouth to mouth to someone who doesn't have like, what are you doing? Like, so anyway, but yeah, that's kind of I have a filmmaking background. I know Elon, you do as well.
Yeah.
Kind of, we've talked before, I think, about how, like, what made us get into that. Have you ever made like a short or like some type of horror film?
Yeah, I have. I made a horror comedy short a long time ago. I think it was around like, oh gosh, 2010, 2011 or
That's the
something.
one you sent me, right?
Yeah.
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 And he's like, no one else will see it, but Brad has seen it.
Right.
I
It is pretty cringy, but I took a long time on it to
Yeah,
get that sound design just right. So,
and that was honestly the best part of it. Sound is something that is always like overlooked, especially in like indie film or like short films or like student films.
mhm.
Because were you in college at the time? Like in some
No,
type?
this is
No, just kind of
yeah,
wanted to do it.
yeah.
Yeah. And what's funny is like it had all the shortcomings that I remember dealing with myself, making my own,
Uh-huh.
short films. And I made a psychological short horror film that I like to say it's more abstract, but it just basically means I didn't really know what the hell I was doing. I didn't really have like a tight story. And so like when someone said, was this kind of like a metaphor for the blah blah blah? I'm like, that's exactly what it was. You nailed it. How did you get that? Ended up stealing that and just using it. It was a metaphor for the current state of the blah blah. But I wrote all the music and performed all the music myself of that short
Mhm.
film. And yeah, like I did the sound design, and I did the sound design for another kind of psychological. I sent you this. It's called Void.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, you
yeah.
can't find some of this stuff like Void. You can't find online because we used SAG actors in the film or in the short film, and they have like
Oh.
strict requirements for public. viewing or whatever. Like I could share it
Sure.
with friends and stuff, but it's like I can't like actually make it public on YouTube.
Right.
But yeah, so we kind of have like a background in just making. I think every most people that I've met most people that want to get into film or that I met in film school, we all had the one thing in common. We wanted to make a horror film.
Mhm.
Everybody, and I don't know why that is. I think it's something about the reality of trying to make something real or real looking or realistic looking. Um, and make it like have it like be effective. And I also think that like form like short form films, short like not YouTube shorts,
Right.
they kind of lend itself well to having like a basic premise, and you can kind of get away with a lot more because it's more about like trying to get a reaction out of you and trying to
Mhm.
make you feel a certain way. But anyway, so that's kind of like I have I've always had like an affinity for horror films, like growing up, Jason, Freddy, um, Friday the 13th, I should say. I know like if people like, you mean Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street? Yes, that's what I mean. But Jason and Freddy are very
Cool.
near and dear to me, and Freddy has always been kind of like my go-to because I just always liked his sense of humor. Like,
Mhm.
you know, he has like a personality, and that's what always made it funny to me. And I was like, well, I like that blend of like comedy and horror, like those two together, because you have
Mhm.
to have like the comedy to kind of offset. It makes the horror moments, the scary moments, more effective. Um,
Yeah, for sure. I like that
and
too.
I always loved loved movies, but also loved games because you're interacting, right? You feel like there's like almost like there are stakes involved now, not the kind you eat, but like what is like gonna happen. Like if I don't do this, I'm gonna die. Like the character is gonna
Mhm.
die. So there is like kind of more at stake there. Um, but yeah, I mean, so like kind of take me back. Do you remember the first like horror movie that you watched like growing up that really like maybe
Um,
terrified you or maybe made you go, I want to know how they ripped that guy's head off or whatever?
well, one of the first, because growing up in my household, um, we were very conservative and we were not allowed to watch rated R movies. So at my friend's house, uh, we watched Aliens, the
Mm.
sequel, and I remember that scared the shit out of me. um, just because, yeah, like that whole setting with all those narrow hallways and tunnels and stuff that they have to navigate around, and um, the whole like sonar, not sonar, but whatever device they use that tells them if something is in motion and something is nearby.
Oh, like the
Uh,
scanner, like the yeah,
yeah, like the scanner
the
that they're looking at. That's super effective. That's basically like going back to Jaws, where it's like you can't actually see the thing, but there's something representative of that thing moving and getting closer.
yeah.
And stuff like that is just super effective. I love stuff like that. Um, so yeah, that really scared me. But I mean, I think growing up, even on like TV, Freddie and Jason would come on from time to time. So it was obviously the, TV edited version. So there was a
Yeah.
lot of stuff cut out of it. But that was probably my first introduction to horror movies. Again, because I couldn't watch much in the horror genre growing up as a kid because it
Yeah.
was against the rules. But
You hit all the horror movies. You're like, went over to
yeah.
a friend's house and they had The Gate, and you're like, I watched this movie, The Gate, and it's crazy. Um, by the way, The Gate is a classic. I think it's a like early '80s movie. Steven Dorff. They have like
Oh,
the
wow.
gate to hell in their closet. Yeah.
Mhm.
And they had like little like animated like the stop motion animated demons and stuff. It was yeah,
Oh, nice.
the cheesy '80s stuff, but it was fun. I think the
Yeah.
first horror movie that I ever watched, and surprisingly, it's only rated PG, because PG-13 wasn't around then. It's not rated R.
Mhm.
Was I think I was around 5 or 6 years old, and I watched Poltergeist,
Oh, yeah.
which terrified me. When the little boy almost gets swallowed by the tree. and then they're like swimming in that pool with like all the skulls, like the pool that's in the
Mhm.
process of being like dug, that,
Right.
and then obviously like the whole like crossing over into the yeah, there's and obviously the classic you know uh guy in the kitchen with the like getting food and then like goes to the mirror and like starts ripping his face off and stuff.
Mhm.
That terrified me, and as I got older, whenever I'd watch it, because there was a period where like I had like PTSD with it and I couldn't watch it. But then once I kind of
Yeah.
got over that, I I think this is kind of how I approach horror movies today. Although obviously being an adult, I can watch like this. It doesn't really affect me. Um,
Right.
is I'm like, how did they do that? Like, how did they
Mhm.
do these scenes? I started kind of approaching that, and that's kind of trickled over into every kind of movie. Like when like the scene I sent you earlier, where the woman gets hit by a car, and it's so realistic, the way they
Yeah.
shot that, and the way her body like moves on the ground and everything. I was like,
Right.
it was almost like seeing someone get hit by a car in real life, which
Mhm.
would be absolutely horrific. But like since it's in a movie, I'm like, I don't really care. It's like I can't listen to true crime. My wife loves this stuff, but that shit terrifies me. I'm like,
Right.
these are real like things that happen to people. Whereas like a movie is like, oh, okay, human centipede, that's just stupid.
Right.
Like that's just gross out stuff. I've always kind of been drawn more to like the psychological, supernatural stuff than like the uber like gore fest,
Mhm.
But I do like, Jason Voorhees and stuff like that. But that's I don't know. There's something campy about it. No pun intended.
Yeah.
Um, you know, but yeah, I think that movie was what kind of got me thinking about it. And then I've made like a few short horror films over the years, trying to like, you know, like this would be fun. I think I did a movie called The Children back in like the early 2000s with my cousins, where they were like ghost children that lived in our house. And yeah, and I played like I had a cameo as like a pizza guy or something. Yeah. Um, just kind of like, just trying to figure stuff out. We didn't At the time we didn't have like all the technology we have now, where it's like you can get these amazing shots.
Mhm.
Um, what's funny is you blinked, Elon, and it froze for a second, and it just looked like you were falling asleep, which is typically what my wife does when I start talking like this. Um,
I mean, it's probably because of the rain and,
yeah,
that
the rain does make you sleep.
yeah.
It makes all of us sleepy. Um, but yeah, I think, kind of going after that, and just kind of like being like, I like being scared in a controlled setting, right? Like it's a movie.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, Poltergeist was probably my first, real like terrifying kind of movie. And Jaws, I mean, Jaws is definitely terrifying, but it
Mhm.
like terrified me in a different way. I just didn't want to go in the water.
Yeah. Yeah, true.
There's something about like it's a physical shark that is, you know, does like it's just a killing machine, right? It's not going on land to murder people. It's not like Jason Voorhees where, oh shit, I tripped and now I'm dead. I'm gonna die.
Right.
'Cause I'm always gonna trip and he's always gonna catch up. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm a big it's really hard these days because I don't know if you kind of I kind of try to pursue finding like horror movies that actually are scary. Um,
Yeah.
it's difficult these days
Mhm.
with the law, all the stuff that's out there.
And especially ones that don't try to scare you using cheap tricks,
Right. Like
like
jump scare
it's
after
actually terrifying. There's
yeah.
actually some tension involved.
Yeah. And that's what I could say about uh like Mike Flanagan's work on like The Haunting of Hill House
Mhm.
and Haunting of Bly Manor. They are very slow burns, but like he builds that tension so effectively that like when there are jump scares, they're very effective, but they don't happen 24/7, right?
Yeah.
Like they're not all the time. Even like Midnight Mass, like there were parts in that they're just absolutely terrifying for reasons that weren't jump scare related.
Mhm.
Um, which if you've never seen, I would highly suggest if you're into horror and like those kind of slow burn things, check out all of his Netflix series, even like The Midnight Club, which was not my favorite of his, but it was still decent. But
Mm.
yeah, I think also as like home theater enthusiasts, I'm always like, we've talked about it before. Horror movies need to have like really effective sound design. They need to have like amazing sound design to like work,
Mhm.
right? Because otherwise, it's just not gonna work. Um,
Right.
do you have any like off the top of your head that you like know? Like you're like, oh, that movie, the sound design of this horror film, like it's kind of like your go-to when someone's like, yeah, I don't know, sound design, blah blah blah. You're like, have you watched this?
Ugh. Um,
I feel like I'm interviewing you.
Gosh. I mean, yeah, like we kind of discussed that. I honestly haven't seen enough horror
Yeah,
movies, even though I'm a big fan of the genre. Again, because I just couldn't
yeah,
growing up in my household. So I've kind of had to backtrack and, watch some classics as an adult.
yeah.
But also, I mean, more stuff is coming out all the time. I just can't keep up, especially now with kids.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, it's very few and far between moments that I can find where we can actually, my wife and I can actually sit down and watch something scary. Because, then we'll just have to pause it if my kids come out and say, "Hey, I need something," or
yeah.
it's like, "Oh, okay." So, but as far as like, yeah, gosh, as far as sound design is concerned, uh, honestly, I don't know.
You have
Nothing's
no,
coming off the top of
like
my
I have
head
no,
at the
yeah.
moment.
Um, I mean, you've seen The Shining, right? Like,
Yeah.
so like to me, that is extremely effective sound design because
Mhm.
there's moments in that movie when like there's that specific shot where like Jack Nicholson's character Jack uh is staring out the window at Danny and um oh my god, Wendy. Sorry, I just had a moment. I was like, Shelly. No, that's the actor's name.
Right.
No, Wendy and Danny, and it's just like a slow zoom in, and the music's kind of doing that. They use like timpani drums where they're like like that. But
Yeah.
then there's like a high pitched whistle that slowly comes in, and it's
Mhm.
this. He's like literally not. He's got one facial expression, which is like that
Yeah.
kind of like weird, like maniacal, like smile, right?
Mhm.
And it's the slow, like creep zoom in, not even like a dolly in. Like the camera's not actually moving, but the lens are like zooming in,
Mhm.
and the way that the music builds up, you get into his headspace. Kind of like this is what he's like. He is so focused on like he's just out. Like like his brain is gone right now. I love that kind of effective sound design. Just it's so simple, it's so subtle that like a lot of people don't recognize it. And the same thing is the when Danny's like going through on the little like the three wheel like what the heck do you call
Oh
those things?
yeah.
All you hear there's no
Big
music.
wheel.
The big wheel, yeah. You don't hear any music, right? Until he comes around that corner and sees those two girls at the end of the hall. All you
Mhm.
hear is the wheels on the carpet and then on the floor and then on the carpet and it's like
Right.
it keeps going. And obviously they're intercutting like other things with that, but it builds it like you're talking about tension. It builds this tension over time that I think a lot of movies these days, they just want to get to the scare, right? They just want to
Mhm.
get to the scare, and it's like, it's not that effective. It's when you can build that up,
Yeah.
and it's just once he comes around that corner and sees those two girls, and it just cuts to him like with his face, like it
Right.
is terrifying because it's just music, and there's like no like like the music and the girl saying, "Come play with us, Danny."
Mhm.
Like, I still think about that movie. My wife refuses to watch that movie with me, even though, it's one of my favorites. It's something about, like, the harrowing aspect of dealing with that kind of, like, psychotic husband, that she in her previous marriage, like, it wasn't anything like that, but it was still very traumatic. So I get it. But I
Yeah.
think it's like a kind of a textbook example of uh sound design and editing and how it
Mhm.
all can kind of come together, and something so simple can create something so effective that like you don't need all that other like stuff, you know.
Yeah. That
um
reminds me of, Hereditary.
I have not seen
Um
that. That's on my list.
Oh, okay. Because I mean, this isn't giving anything away, but, his like, the younger sister that's in it, um, she's like I don't know if she's, like, autistic or something, but she does this thing every once in a while where she just goes like, it's just, like, kind of a nervous tick or something. She does that
Yeah,
quite a bit. And that comes in and out and comes back, like, later on in the movie, and, like, it's just a very well done use of sound design that is so simple, just a single noise that she makes with, clicking her tongue, and, like, they use that so many different, very effective times throughout the movie, so
yeah,
it's simple things like that, yeah, like, it's like, I wonder how long it took to find something so simple.
yeah,
Like, the
yep,
simplest things usually end up being the hardest to come up with,
yeah.
but, man, it's effective.
I know, and sometimes some of the movies will use like a MacGuffin, which if people don't know what that is, it's kind of like a prop that really just makes it's basically why the story exists, or
Yeah,
it's integral to the story, even though it holds no other purpose than just being, you know, like part of the story,
right.
or just to sell this certain thing, right? It's
Mhm.
not really, it's not really used for anything else. So like, I always think we were just watching, again, Insidious Chapter 3. The girl gets hit by a car, spoiler, and she's in leg cast. Both of her legs are broken. So her dad gives her a bell. And he's like, anytime you need me, ring this bell. You can already see where this is going. It's a horror movie. The bell is going to go off by itself at some point. We know it. Um,
Right.
and I still think it can be effective, but sometimes, in other movies that I've seen, it feels a little forced when something like that comes up, and you're
Mhm.
like, "Oh, okay." Um,
Right.
you kind of go on the other end, or not other end, I should say, but like talking about Smile, which we were talking
Mhm.
about before we started. My wife and I just watched that last night, and has one of the best Dolby Atmos uh like mixes in a horror film that ever heard.
Wow.
Um, yeah, there were moments where I'll just say this real quick. The movie was starting, and I was kind of like talking to my wife. I was like, "Man, this sounds like really good. Like, it sounds like almost like real." I was like, "It's part of that's that the actress speakers were using from Aperion Audio." But I was like, "Yeah, it's just the mix. Like the way it's mixed, it's very very cool, and like the kind of old school um soundtrack, like the music
Mm.
is very like kind of 80s inspired, not directly like, you're not going to like listen to Stranger Things and think that this sounds exactly the same.
Mhm.
um but it's mostly like digital instruments and things like that. There's like some static mixed in that will like kind of bounce around the room, so it'll like be in all the speakers
Oh,
and overhead and stuff. But
yeah.
yeah, it's kind of like first few minutes of movie, and there was like this sound that I heard, and I was like, kind of came over to my left, like from my left, and I was like, "What the hell? Well, what the heck was that?" I was like, "Did something in the house with her or in her office?" And I look over at my wife, and she's like opening her soda, her bottle of soda, and I was like, "Okay." So I was already on edge.
Right.
But no, I was telling Elon, I was like, there's those shots in a lot of movies, but like in horror movies, there's always like these shots of like a character will open a refrigerator or a cabinet, and the camera's inside the cabinet pointing at them, right?
Mhm.
So you see their face. Well, like I'm like, this is all about immersion. So like she opens the pantry, the camera's in the pantry, and she reaches up and grabs something from like the top shelf, and you actually hear it go from like the middle, like top middle, like she grabs it and like it slides on the shelf, and it just, you hear her pull it down from over your head. Like you feel like you're watching her from in the cut. Like this, I was like, this is amazing. Like that was so cool.
Yeah.
Um, and then there's like another part I don't want to like spoil a movie for anybody that hasn't seen it, but um there's a part where like this character is walking down a hallway. It's like a really tall, like, thing. And like you hear it clawing because you see it clawing the roof, like, or the ceiling. But then
Mhm.
when the camera kind of turns around and it's like on the main character, you hear it like coming from the back of the room, like in the hallway. But it feels like
Wow.
you're in this tight hallway with her.
Yeah.
And it's just so effective, so effective. And I just love stuff like that. And it can get overdone if you're not careful. Like you can overdo it with that stuff. But this felt
Mhm.
very like natural and organic in terms of like the sound design and where things were placed in the room. That's one of the best Dolby Atmos mixes I've heard of a horror movie. I definitely recommend it. If you're into horror and you want like a good kind of demo. The whole movie is like a great kind of slow burn too.
Yeah. Smile, right?
Smile, yeah. And the
Smile.
second one just hit theaters on the 18th. So like there's a sequel. I've not seen the sequel, obviously, but we will be watching it when it comes out
Yeah.
on 4K Blu-ray.
4K.
Yes. But yeah, I think coming off of all the Insidious movies, some of those were kind of the mix on some of those was kind of eh.
Mhm.
The last one sounded the best out of all of them, I think. The third one was a close second. Um, the first one was kind of underwhelming. The second one was extremely underwhelming. There was not a whole lot going on there.
Aw.
And then the fourth one was just kind of like, did they even mix this in surround sound? Like, um, but yeah, I mean, the Conjuring movies are some other movies that really, the second one in particular, there's quite a few
Mhm.
scenes that sound really, really freaking cool, man.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's in Dolby Atmos too. I think the first one might just be in 5.1. Could be wrong on that.
Yeah, you might be right because The Conjuring is have been around for a while,
Yeah.
like, before Atmos became a popular thing, I think.
Yeah. Well, Insidious was 2011, the first one. So like
Yeah,
I don't think that one I think that one was also 5.1. I don't think it got to
yeah,
Atmos until like the fourth, if I'm being honest with you. It did
yeah.
upmix pretty well, but there was just not a lot going on like even in the rears. So
Oh,
like,
man.
yeah, kind of disappointing.
Mhm.
Um, the It movies, like the It chapter 1 and chapter 2 have some great Atmos mixes, but also I just
Mhm.
really think that those are always a good mix between like jump scares and just kind of setting a tone, like
Yeah,
like a horror tone,
right.
um, just kind of puts you at like this state of like uneasiness. You're like, I don't I don't feel comfortable, and that's kind of like the point, right? Like you're not supposed to.
Right.
Um, and some people hate that. Like some people don't like it, and that's fine. Like everybody's different. Some people not like watching comedies. Don't like laughing at all, which I'm not friends with any of those people. Um, but yeah, man, there's like I think last I don't know what we were on stream and we were talking about it, and I think someone mentioned Sinister, which still to this day is one
Yeah.
of those movies that like I said, hard to find like a good scary movie these days that
Mhm.
actually is scary. And that was one of the last ones with Ethan Hawke that I really, really like. That one frightened me in all the best possible ways. Like I've watched it like two or three times now, and it's just like it still holds up. It's still well done. Um,
Without going into spoilers, what's the plot for that
so
one?
he's like I'm trying to remember because we haven't watched it recently, but he's I think he's like a writer.
Mhm.
He's like a horror novelist or something like that, and
Yeah.
um, he like does research, and they moved into this house where like this basically all this stuff happens, right? Like he's uh like some family was like killed, or I'm trying to. YouTube's been really weird with like the way they ban like they're taking things down. So I'm like trying to not say the
Oh.
M word because for some reason They're just like, nope, we don't like that word. Um,
Oh,
yeah, we're talking about horror movies, nothing real life, but
yeah.
the algorithm doesn't know that. So like, yeah, but basically like, yeah, this house has a history, and I think he knew that going in, and like brought his family with him, which I'm like, that's not responsible at all.
Yeah.
How would you like living there? And like he basically, yeah, he um through doing that, like he starts to uncover things, and things start happening that yeah, I won't say anymore because I'll end up spoiling it. Um yeah, they're all dead. They live in a place called Easteros. Um there's dragons.
Easteros.
Easteros instead of Westeros. But yeah, and also like talking about a horror movie that's kind of a comedy. I mean, I always think about Shaun of the Dead.
Oh yeah.
I mean, classic, you know.
Yep.
I mean, and all the George Romero stuff, classic too, but this was like, you know, Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg's spin on it. And it's just like another one that like holds up, and it makes me sad when I start realizing that it's like 20 years old. I'm
I
like,
know, right?
it's like, what? Like, how old is this
Yeah.
movie? It's just a fun movie. Like, it's scary at times, but also funny, and never
Mm.
takes itself too seriously, which is another thing that really, yeah. I'm like, horror movies don't need to take themselves so seriously.
And the 20th anniversary edition 4K Blu-ray that's coming out is going to be Atmos. So,
Well, see, now I'm kind of pissed because I bought the Cornetto trilogy, and you
so
telling
did
me I
I.
gotta buy Shaun of the Dead again? I mean, I will because I love
I
it, but
know. I will too because I definitely want that audio mix. Well, I mean, and I'm okay spending money as long as it's going to Edgar Wright because
yeah.
he's one of my favorite directors. So I want to support him.
Come on, working title. What the heck? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Um, I was gonna say something. There was there's another movie I was gonna talk about that I can't, just like went out of my head.
Boop, boop, boop. The other day, I watched The Sixth Sense for the first time in, gosh,
Oh, and
I
how
don't
did that
know,
hold up? How, like,
a couple decades.
yeah, it's like because it was '99 when it came out.
Mhm.
So
But yeah, it's great.
still
I
good.
mean,
Still hits all the
yeah, yeah. Um, I mean, it's kind of sad knowing that like M. Night Shyamalan kind of, well, for one, the media didn't help either. Because I think once The Sixth Sense was released and everybody loved it, and it was one of the most critically acclaimed films at the time, whatever, and then I think Time Magazine or some major publication named him the next Spielberg, and so I think that just kind of
I got to him a little
got
bit.
to him,
Yeah,
just knowing that, like, he had such a massive hit on his hands that, like, "Oh, great, I guess I gotta stay up to that standard." But I think what ultimately caused his demise, I mean, he's definitely kinda been on a rebound as of late
yeah.
with not only movies, but also, TV
TV show. Yeah,
series. Yeah, because I know he's done at least a couple on Apple TV Plus or something. I haven't seen any, but, um, like, just the whole idea that The Sixth Sense had such an incredible twist at the end that I don't know why he thought he had to continue that aspect of his
that.
filmmaking. Like,
Yeah,
okay, then I'm gonna make movies where there's gonna be a crazy twist. It's like,
yeah.
no, man, just leave Sixth Sense as I mean, Unbreakable, that was a pretty good twist too. His second movie. But then, The Village and The Lady in the Water, like,
Signs.
you know, yeah,
Yeah,
Signs. It's like, buddy, that doesn't have to be like your
yeah.
shtick. Just
It was
just
almost like
make
his
good
calling card.
movies. Yeah.
You
It's
know?
like you didn't have to do that. You didn't have to go down that
Yeah,
road. You could have just been a Spielberg by just directing movies well that just happen to have, good stories, whatever, but
Yeah.
you don't have to make every single one have to have this twist at the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Happening. You ever see The
Oh,
Happening with Mark Wahlberg?
yeah.
Um,
The part in
that
that movie
was
that got me was when he went on he had that like cough syrup speech. I bought a bottle of cough syrup, a completely superfluous bottle. I never thought I would hear the word superfluous come out of Mark Wahlberg's mouth, and I never want to hear it again.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and
Because I
then
mean,
Zoe Deschanel just kind of like looking at him with her like like piercing blue eyes, and she's just like wide. I'm like,
mhm.
yeah. My wife and I call that movie the crappening. Um, it's one of those
But I
movies that I
mean,
don't
like,
think there's any redeeming quality to it. Like I would never want to watch that again,
well, here's
ever.
the thing. He's M. Night Shyamalan is really good at world building,
Yes.
and the first few scenes building the world of The Happening where people are just dying, that was great. That was terrifying. The people that are, way up high building a skyscraper or something.
And just
And
jumping like,
yeah, they're
yeah,
just falling. And the sound design with people just falling and landing on cars and landing on buildings and landing on just like metal things. That was terrifying. I mean,
yeah,
like that was very effective. But then, you know, then the rest of the movie happened and it made it
yeah,
worse. But like, yeah, he's got great ideas. It's just the execution and the follow through, and then this notion that he has to have this crazy twist at the end that just kind of,
yeah,
yeah, it just kind of ruined his career. But
yeah.
have you seen Old? What was?
No, there's that, and I think the last M Night Shyamalan movie we watched was Knock at the Cabin, which we both
Yeah, we
enjoyed.
we watched that too.
It
That
was
was pretty good. It
yeah.
was pretty
Um,
good.
there's Old and his new one Trap. We haven't seen either one of
Oh,
those. Yeah, the one with
yeah.
Josh Hartnett, which is nice to see Josh Hartnett making a comeback too.
I know, right?
I dude, The Faculty. Speaking of like kind of campy horror movies, probably one of my favorite Robert Rodriguez movies. Um,
Mhm.
and it came out when I was in high school, so like,
Yeah.
uh, I was like, ah, that's so cool. Like he drives like I can't remember what he drove. He's like a muscle car or something, and he was selling, some type of chemical. We'll say, like, he
Mhm.
made some stuff in like pens, like and sold them to
Right.
kids at school. It's totally awful, but yeah. But no, have you seen Old? I know the premise of it, but I have not seen it.
No,
No.
no.
Um,
Yeah, I haven't seen any of his stuff recently, except
yeah,
for Knock at the Cabin.
yeah. I will say, people have always given him shit. They're like, I really enjoyed The Sixth Sense. I enjoyed Signs. There were some cool moments in that movie.
Yeah.
The twist at the end. Uh, the Village, I've always been kind of an advocate for that movie because I think it's a beautiful movie. Like the way it was shot,
Yes. Cinematography,
cinematography.
excellent.
He always like M Night Shyamalan. I can't even talk. M Night always knows exactly how to like how he wants his frame, and I love
Yeah.
that about him. He's not
Mhm,
afraid to kind of let shots linger. There's
mhm,
and I just like the score of The Village too by James Newton Howard, just amazing.
mhm.
Um, and I love the movie, but I always say if it just stopped before the twist, it would have been a better
Right.
ending than what we got.
Yeah.
Um, because I love the kind of whole like that which we do not speak of, like
Mhm.
and like things that were like red were bad, like it was a bad color.
Right.
Um, and it has one of the best. I'm just gonna say it, like I'm gonna spoil it a little bit if you've not seen The Village. Um, there's a moment where Adrian Brody's character, who's like the town um mentally impaired person, right? Like he's not
Right.
all there.
Mhm,
He goes in and stabs Joaquin Phoenix's character. And
mhm.
the way that scene plays out, I think and this is what it goes back to the cinematography, because you just see him, you see it like a close up of him and he walks up to Joaquin Phoenix, and you just see Joaquin Phoenix's reaction on his
Yeah.
face, and you're like,
Right.
what's going on? And then it cuts to an overhead shot of them, and like Adrian Brody backs up, and you see the bloody knife come out of the. It's just so well done, but you
Yeah.
don't actually see the act itself. You see like the aftermath of it. I
Mhm.
love that kind of stuff, and that like in its own right is like terrifying when you watch it, and then he just like falls to the ground, and you're like, that was really powerful, like
Yeah.
that. But yeah, they kind of and I think, he kind of, unfortunately, I think his peak was M. Night Shyamalan's peak was like The Sixth Sense, right? Like
Yeah.
he hit that, but I'm glad that like he's still making stuff because like he's
Mhm.
kind of had a comeback, like you said.
Yeah.
Um, I just yeah, I know everybody like Lady on the Water or Lady in the Water.
In the water, yeah.
I couldn't even make it through the movie. Like it was that. And
Yeah.
I like I know people like hated The Village and for various reasons, um, but I'm also like I don't care if a movie's slow. If it's like got me engaged, it doesn't really matter if a movie is slow paced, you
Yeah.
know. Um, I mean, hell, people play Red Dead Redemption 2, which is one of the slowest paced games ever. It literally takes you like 5 or 6 hours to get out of like the opening of the game.
Right.
Like
Right.
it takes forever. And like when you skin an animal, it's in like real time. Like you just have to sit there and watch the animation play out. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of like uh, I don't know. It's a weird thing to me that people don't tend to want to spend, you know, 2 hours. I mean, everybody has their own opinion, their own
Mhm.
taste and preferences, which is fine. Um, I think I'm not a fan of the Top Gun movies. Like I think they're especially the first one. I'm just not a huge fan of it, but people love them.
Yeah, yeah.
Reasons. I'm just like not. It's not a movie that I like would turn on.
Mhm.
That's then again, people are like, I don't like Back to the Future, and so I don't talk to those people. Um, no, they kind of switch gears real quick. Kind of talk about games because I know that um, I think you've finished Inside, the
I
video game
did.
Inside,
Yeah.
and Limbo, and I've
Mhm.
only finished Limbo, but I think video games, like I mentioned earlier, can be far more immersive because it's interactive,
Yep.
right? Like so, kind of walk me through like when you were playing Inside, which I think also like has some excellent sound design
Mhm.
itself,
Oh, yeah.
um like, were there parts that you were just generally creeped out by that
Oh, yeah.
you wouldn't mind
Oh, yeah.
shout?
I mean, yeah, like, just anytime well, I mean, like, I know you don't like to be chased,
Well, yeah,
and,
we'll talk about that.
yeah, those, moments in Inside where you're being chased by the Doberman Pinscher dogs,
Ugh.
and you gotta, like, jump on a fence and climb over the fence before they attack you and rip you to shreds.
I remember
There's
that part.
several moments, towards the beginning of the game like that, but it's one of the best video games you should play because even though it's only in stereo, or because it's only in stereo, you should definitely play inside with headphones on because it's even more immersive and more terrifying
Yeah,
and more effective that way. Because whenever you are being chased, or whenever there is like um, there's another point where like truck lights suddenly turn on and are driving towards you and people are chasing you and you got to get away before they shoot you or take you over or whatever. Every time those action beats happen, you can hear your character's heartbeat. So if you're listening on headphones, it's just that much more jarring. But I mean, in a good way, not like in a
yeah,
I can't stand this kind of way, but in a like, oh my God, my heartbeat is racing because I
yeah,
can hear my character's heartbeat racing, you know? So yeah, it's just very well done that way. But even then, like, because I it seems to me like you didn't get to the point where there's this really crazy morphing that happens to the character. Have you gotten to that point?
No.
Yeah.
Oh,
There's this I highly suggest you play Inside again because there is a point because that's the thing about Inside is that it's actually kind of a short game.
yeah.
If you play
I
it
mean,
through,
Limbo
you could
was as well, yeah. Because it's what Limbo and Inside are
yes.
by the same developer.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Inside is longer,
Mhm.
but yeah, Limbo is definitely pretty short. Um, but even in that short amount of time, you're just the same character, and you're trying to solve all these puzzles to advance through the game. Same thing with Inside. There's various puzzles you have to uh, figure out and solve, and but there's this one point that it just takes this turn, but it's part of the game. Like you think something just went wrong. You're like, "Oh my god, what did I do? How do I get out of this? Is this part of the game?" Yes, it is part of the game, and you continue. I don't want to spoil it, but you
Yeah.
continue the game in this crazy I love unpredictability. If
Yes.
I can't predict the next phase or the next level and you surprise the heck out of me, kudos. You've created a game that I will adore for the rest of my life. I mean, sure, once you know the
Yeah.
twist, then but I mean, even then, the replay value of those games is through the roof as well, just because they're such good games and they're so simple. It's just side scrolling,
Yep.
yet it's like 2.5D
Yeah.
because the landscapes and the everything are just so gorgeous and the lighting is so dramatic and
Yeah.
but yeah, it's just you go this way or that way, and you have an action button and a jump button. That's it. Simplest mechanics, simplest gameplay, and yet the story is great, the sound design is great, and yeah, I love they're still developing their third game because if you go on their website, they'll have like little updates from time to time, but
Yeah.
they haven't really updated it in a long time. It still just says, "We're plugging away, and it's gonna be like a new sci-fi game, and we
Yeah.
hope you like it." It's like, "Yes. Can you please finish it? Because I really
Finish the
wanna
dang
play it."
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Along the same lines, I mean, I'll go back to Limbo in a second, but along the same lines of that kind of 2.5D, have you ever
Mhm.
heard of a game series called Little Nightmares?
Yeah,
Yeah, very
yeah.
similar. Kind of less we'll say abstract in its art design. Whereas
Mhm.
like Limbo and both Inside are very like Limbo. I love Limbo because it's like just black and white pretty much.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
where Little Nightmares is can have very kind of colorful sections, but still creepy.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and it's all just derived. It's like not derived. It's all like puzzles and very simple in terms of like, oh, here are the controls. Like they're not, you're not going to be like having to memorize like 800 different button combinations.
Right.
It's like one button to jump and another button to interact or whatever.
Mhm.
Uh, I really like those games. I haven't played the second, even though I own it. It's a problem I have. I have an addiction. Even though I own it, but Little Nightmares 3 is coming out. It might already
Yeah,
be out. I don't remember. But yeah, I need to go through those games again before that comes out.
yeah.
But yeah, Limbo has the part like I remember Inside when you're getting chased by the Doberman pinchers and you're having to like jump over and you have to time it because they'll run around through that
Yeah,
hole. That
right.
scared me, but like getting chased by the giant spider in Limbo was freaking terrifying. I don't like being chased by things in video games. I mean, probably in real life
Mhm.
too, but I've thankfully never been chased by. Well, that's not. You know what? I know where it comes from now. I got chased by a Dalmatian when I was like 7 years old. And if
Oh,
people don't know, Dalmatians are freaking assholes.
yeah. They'll
Yeah,
bite you.
they will bite you. Um, and she had just had puppies, so she was like in protect mode. And it wasn't even like I was doing anything. I was walking down a sidewalk, and like this person had a sorry, I just got a text from like it's election time, guys. So I'm getting all these stupid texts from like
Hooray!
politicians. Yay.
Right.
But no, I was walking down the sidewalk and someone had their door open, but they had like a, one of the baby what do you call, like, well, I can't even think right now. Um, it's like one of the baby fences. So like so their baby can't
Oh,
escape.
yeah,
But the
yeah.
dog saw me and just jumped right over that and started chasing me down the sidewalk.
Dude.
Terrifying. So I don't like being chased.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe I still have PTSD from it. But
Mhm.
but no, like that scene where you're getting chased by the spider. Yeah, after you play it a few times and you know what to expect,
Mhm.
yeah, it's still kind of like don't like being chased.
Yeah.
Uh and I have gotten better over the years. I'm able to get through like the Resident Evil remakes where Tyrant is chasing you and
Yeah.
things like that. And I love the Resident Evil games, so like that does help. But there was
Yeah.
a couple of games actually. They made a sequel to this game. It was a launch game for the Xbox 360 called Condemned: Criminal Origins, and basically,
Oh.
yeah, there was a lot of creep factor in that and a lot of like horror elements. You basically play like this detective, voiced by Greg Grunberg. So if you know who that is, um, he's an
No.
actor. He was in Lost and been in a bunch of Heroes as well. Um,
Oh.
but yeah, so there's multiple parts in the first game that are just downright creepy. You go to this abandoned shopping mall.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
I know
yeah,
space. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. But so you go to this abandoned shopping mall, and there's a couple creepy things about it. One, it's parts of it still have power, and it like was abandoned during like the holidays, and so
Mhm.
like all the Christmas decorations are still on, as well as the music. But the music, because it's been playing for so many years over and over again, it's become warped and distorted. So it'll be like, you know, playing like Jingle Bells or something, but it'll be like it'll start slowing down, which is
Right.
unnerving, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But there's mannequins everywhere, but some of the mannequins are actual enemies that will just attack
Oh,
you if you get too close. But you
yeah.
never know because they all look the same.
Right.
Um, that was something I always remember. I love that whole like area in the game, and it's all like melee combat, so there's not really many guns in the game, so it's like you're always
Mm.
using like a pipe or something.
Yeah.
But they made a sequel, and the sequel not as scary, but there's a part later on in the game where you get to a cabin and a grizzly bear breaks into the cabin and chases you through the house, and
Whoa.
it's like it catches up to you. Obviously, what do you think happens? You're dead.
Yeah.
So you have to figure out where to go, and I couldn't do it. I was like, "This is too much." Like, I can't. I literally never finished the game. I never got past that grizzly bear part, and I could have watched a YouTube tutorial or something on how to do it.
Sure, sure.
That was still too I tried. It was still too nerve-wracking for me to do. I don't know how the game ends or anything like that.
Mhm,
Uh, but yeah, that Condemned 1 is still probably one of my favorite, like, horror games.
mhm.
Just like there's even like a part like where the lights go out and the lights come back up and all the mannequins are like surrounding you. And it's just right out of a horror movie, It's like, whoa,
Yeah.
this is, freaky. Um, kind of go back a little bit though. If there are any gamers watching, uh there was a game, on the GameCube called Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem. And
Whoa.
yeah, it was. So it kind of spanned like like you played different characters throughout the years, and it had a very interesting mechanic called a sanity meter, and if you let that get too low, the game would start like fucking with you basically. You'd like go through a door and you'd walk into the room and the room's upside down. Like the lights are on the ceiling and
Whoa.
like you're upside down. You'd start seeing things that weren't there. And I think probably it was all freaky. And I used to let my sanity meter just go all the way down to not like just to experience
Yeah.
what they did. The game would literally mess with you by throwing up like a screen saying like we can't read the disk or we can't read your memory card. Your save file will be deleted. Um,
No way.
yeah, and it freaked people out, obviously,
Yeah.
because they thought, oh, like this is real, but no, it was the game
Right.
messing with you. And I was like, that's genius. Like that is so
Yeah.
funny. Um,
So how do you keep your sanity level high?
I can't remember. There are things you could do. It's been so long. It's such an old game. And the
Yeah.
thing is, you might be able to get it. I don't know if there's a way you can get it. They never
Oh.
released it on any other platform, to
Mhm.
my knowledge, other than the GameCube. I don't think you can find it in like a Nintendo store,
Yeah.
like like digitally or anything. Like you can only play it that way. And it's a Nintendo exclusive. So like, I
Mhm.
would love to see them kind of come up with or come out with even like an updated high res version of it. Don't even need to redo any of the assets. Just give me
Yeah.
something I could play on the Switch. That would be super cool.
Well, I mean, like, the Switch has all those emulators, since I'm
That's true. Yeah, there might be a way.
subscribed to their Nintendo whatever that allows me access to NES games, SNES, N64, but
Yeah,
I don't think GameCube or any games that you can access now that I think about it.
yeah, yeah. So
So, they should.
they should, they should. But yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of recent games too that are kind of scary. Alan Wake, the both Alan Wake games are
Mm,
some really psychological, um, psychologically terrifying games.
yeah.
Even BioShock, like the first BioShock, really is like still like
Mhm.
considered horror. Trying to think of anything recently that other than Alan Wake that I've played that's like scary. Because I know some people just don't like like horror games. There's one called
Yeah.
Still Wakes the Deep that I haven't
Oh.
played. Um,
Did you ever play Silent Hill?
yeah, yeah, the
Is that
first,
considered horror?
yeah, oh yeah, like
Yeah.
survival horror.
Mm.
I would say it's more like like Resident Evil, like the first three are definitely like horror, like survival horror games. I
Yeah.
think Silent Hill, I would consider that more straight up horror, like psychological, because
Oh.
there's like some weird stuff going on. Whereas like Resident Evil is just about like, oh, there's a virus and there's zombies and yeah, there's scary moments with like crocodiles and things like that. But I'm sorry, giant crocodiles, I should say.
Ah.
Yeah, they're doing freaking experiments, man.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I think Silent Hill because they just remade the second one and that
Mm.
came out.
Yeah.
It kind of be interesting to kind of go back and revisit that. I never found the movies to be particularly good though. Um,
Oh, never saw the movies.
yeah, it's kind of like someone's like, "I've never seen any of the Resident Evil movies." I'm like, "Don't start. Just don't watch them. They're bad.
I
They're so
know,
bad."
right?
They're not even
Yeah,
like scary. They're more
yeah.
like, "Hey, how can we put Mila Jovovich on screen and try to make her look like a badass, even though she can't
Right.
act." Um, it's like multipass, but
Uh-huh.
but yeah,
Multipass.
right. Oh man, yeah. There's just so many like the problem is like I was like, hey, I have a laundry list of horror games, and now that I'm here, I'm like, okay, talked about that, talked about that. What else is there? There are quite a few. Like there, and sometimes you just forget. Like like Alien Isolation is one that I played a little bit,
Mm, yeah.
but the whole point of that is a xenomorph chases you, and what don't I like? Is
Yeah.
I don't like to be chased. So like you got to hide from these hide from this thing, and it's like it always finds me. Um, Until Dawn was another one that's kind of more of like a cinematic game where
Oh.
you're kind of controlling these characters, but you're more or less seeing a story. And it's kind of like a choose who dies, or you try to save everybody.
Oh,
But like if
yeah.
a character dies, like okay, like or if you hate a character, you're like, well, yeah, I'm gonna make sure this character is dead. Like I don't care. Um, that was a pretty good game. They remade that, but if you have the PS5 version, I wouldn't even bother.
Mhm.
Um, they changed a bunch of stuff and made it. They changed like kind of the artistic design of certain
Oh.
things that doesn't really feel like the same game to me. Just kind of
Isn't The Last of Us horror?
yeah, yeah. I mean that was the survival horror, I guess.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, definitely. Um, I really enjoy both of those games.
Mhm.
The first one more so than the second one, but the second one I think production quality wise is just like so much higher. I mean, it's Naughty Dog, so
Oh,
like
yeah.
they're normally like really up there. Some people didn't really care for like the story or anything like that. Kind
That's
of
what I heard
the
too.
direction they went. I mean, hell, like what some of the actors and actresses in the game like were receiving death threats, like actual death threats, which was just like
Come on.
ridiculous. Grow up. Like it's you
Seriously,
don't like
dude.
something, don't play it. It's
Yeah.
yeah. And besides, like, am I gonna come to your job and like threaten you? It's like
I know.
I don't like just whatever. I may not like what you do for a living, but I'm not gonna come to your place of employment and be like, listen, you.
Yeah.
Uh
The
but yeah,
game
so
wasn't for you. It's like,
yeah.
just
Uh
move on.
yeah. Last of Us though, that was definitely um man, yeah, there's like some like State of Decay. Oh, there's one that I forgot on the PS1, Clock Tower.
Oh.
Yeah, I remember getting freaked out by that game. Now it's like super cheesy.
Right.
Yeah. Fun fact, I had my PS1 copy and actually sold it recently for $300.
Whoa.
Yeah. It
Dang.
fetched a fair. I mean, I sold sold my GameCube component cables, my Nintendo branded component cables for the same amount. People
300 bucks?
$300, man. And
Dude.
that was on the low end at the time when I sold them. Um,
Yeah.
I think you could find them for around $500 or $600.
Jeez.
Yeah. And I'm like, I don't have a GameCube. Yeah. I was just like, well,
Yeah.
I need to pay for I think we were paying for something at the time.
Mhm.
And I was like, well, let me see, like, if I don't want to, I don't want to, like, I don't, I kind of didn't feel right about charging $300, but I'm like, you know what, someone like it, like, I know, like, if I try to get $600, I'm gonna feel really bad. I'm like, I paid $30 for these cables back in 2004. So,
Yeah.
I was
Well,
like,
I
let me
mean,
just,
it's
yeah,
if they're a collector
yeah,
and they wanna collect a rare item,
yeah. I
then
mean, they
yeah.
were pretty much brand new. I think I used them for a month before I got rid of the
Right.
GameCube.
Yeah.
Back in the day. So yeah, we sold them for like that, and I was just like, I can't believe people are paying. But again, like you said, people are paying $600-700 for like a rare video game. I'm
Mhm.
like, okay. And I actually talked to the guy too, like over text for a little while, and he
Mhm.
was super excited, and he's like, I can't believe he was actually like, I can't believe I found like them for this cheap. Are you sure they're real? And like he was like super like pumped about getting them for so cheap. And to me, I'm just like, paid $30 for these.
Right.
But I was happy like they went to a good home. And he had texted me after he got, he was like, dude, they work and they're freaking awesome. I'm playing Resident
Oh,
Evil 4 right now. Thank you
nice.
so much. And so I knew like he was very appreciative, and that made me feel better. And it was like
Yeah.
a bill or like a past due bill that we had to pay or something at the time. This was a few years ago.
Mhm.
Now, but yeah, Clock Tower was a surprise to me because I was like, I'm never gonna play this game again. I don't really collect things like that.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I was like, okay, like cool. Um, but yeah, I still think like horror movies and horror games. I guess Hellblade would be another one that's kind of like horror. It's more
Mhm.
psychological. Like their audio design in these games are just like can best even like the best movies sometimes, especially with
Oh, yeah.
games supporting spatial audio now, uh,
Mhm.
being immersive in that way. Like it's just yeah, like it's hard to beat when you experience a really really good like mix in a video game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of just sucks you in.
Speaking of, being chased, this is
That's how I
this is
met
a
my wife. No.
this is a real story. I remember, I mean, talking about dogs chasing you, I remember the most frightened I ever was by a dog chasing me, and it was so funny looking back on it. I'm riding my bike, again, just down the street, just minding my own business, riding my bike down the street, and it must have been it was a tiny dog. It was probably like a little Pomeranian or something. But it was so aggressive and being like, "You are not supposed to ride your bike down this street because this is my street." And this little tiny ass dog started chasing me. And the thing is, it wouldn't have been so terrifying except for the fact that it did catch up to my bike and it was literally right next to my feet on my pedals. So the fact that it was that close
Yikes.
to me just terrified me. And I remember screaming, but because I was probably like, gosh, I don't know, I was probably like 8 years old, 10 years old, maybe. But I remember the noise that came out of my mouth was I wouldn't be able to recreate it unless I was in that same terrified state of mind, you know?
Yeah.
It's like that kind of noise where it's like just I don't know where that came from and I wouldn't be able to reproduce it, but there you go. There's my terrified scream. So, but yeah, it was that was I definitely had some PTSD for a while after that.
Oh, man,
Um,
like, yeah, getting chased is just
yeah.
nope.
But speaking of PTSD and entertainment, I think the most recent bout of PTSD I had from watching something was when speaking of The Last of Us, when Pedro Pascal's character in Game of Thrones,
Oh,
he was like a Spanish character or something. I forget
yep.
the name. But his death by the hand of, I think the mountain killed him.
Yeah.
That death gave me PTSD for a couple weeks. I literally could not get it out of my head. I just kept
Yeah.
just if I'm doing something, being distracted, whatever. But if I ever had a moment just to myself, boop, that death went right back into my head, and I'm just envisioning it. I'm like, oh my god, I gotta stop thinking about this death.
Yeah.
I mean, if you haven't seen it, I'm not going to spoil it, but whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
or maybe some of you watching know exactly what I'm talking about, which death I'm talking about. Yeah.
It was brutal, man. Like,
Yes. Very brutal.
and I think, that was like I think like season 4 or 5 or something like that.
Something like
Maybe
that, where
season
it was
3. Yep.
like
And
peak popularity.
yeah, the fight scene in particular, they kind of did it in a way where it seemed like he was gonna win. He was gonna win that
Exactly.
fight, and then it
Yep.
just took that turn really
Yep.
fast. Once it I don't wanna spoil it. Okay. I started talking about, stuff and, um,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm actually looking at a IGN list of the top 525 top 25 game like, horror games.
Mm,
And we've talked about most of them so far. There's a couple that I forgot about,
mhm.
which, like I said, there's so many. Like, how can you forget or how can you
Yeah.
remember? Dead Space was one
Oh.
that was very, yeah. I remember playing that when it first came out on the 360, and
Mhm.
it was. I mean, talk about jump scares, many jump scares. And the enemies were like terrifying because, like, if you like some of them if you weren't quick enough they would start like basically the whole thing is like you would shoot limbs off of them with like these
Oh.
this like particular type of gun,
Mhm.
and if you weren't quick enough they would start growing their limbs back quickly and like chase after you. um
Dude.
yeah. Oh,
Your
ridiculous.
favorite.
My favorite. There's a part, in the second one that was also terrifying. You go into this machine. I don't remember the point of the machine. I just remember it took me like 3 or 4 tries to actually finish it. You
Mhm.
go into this machine and it locks your head into place, and it starts lowering this needle into your eye, and you have to steer the needle, or no, you have to like keep your eyeball completely still in this kind of area, and like if you mess it up it'll just go vroom, right through your eye and into your brain, and it's like
Dude.
you're dead. And so you start over, and it's like
Yeah.
your character, like you should just like look it up online because like the whole time it's kind of like the Clockwork Orange thing where like they put this
Mhm.
thing on, like your eye has this thing on it, and it like keeps it open, and your character's
Mhm.
just like looking around like, the whole time like this frantically, and it's so freaking creepy, man. Like it
Oh.
just kind of, the tension there. You're like, oh shit, like this sucks.
Yeah.
But yeah, they remade Dead Space recently. I have not played the remake. Um, there was another game that was supposed to come out and it had a demo called PT, and apparently it was a Silent Hill type of sequel.
Mm,
And it was a demo came out on the PlayStation uh 4, and it was by like Guillermo del Toro was involved,
mm.
and Norman Reedus was involved
Oh,
in it.
wow.
And for whatever reason, Konami like canned it, like they canceled the project.
Ah.
And so this demo is still out there on like they delisted it, but if you had downloaded it, you could still play it.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and I don't have a PS4 anymore to play it, and it's not like backwards compatible on the PS5, so you
Ah,
can't
dang.
just like. But yeah, yeah, it's basically like this. The demo was like this hallway that it was like a loop. Like you just go down, like you'd open the door and like, okay, it's another loop, but like there'd be things that would change in the loop, and yeah, terrifying.
Wow.
Terrifying. You come around the corner and there's like a woman just standing there, like this tall woman. Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah. Why? Yeah, like clock towers on this list, like all of these things that we've talked about. Um,
Haha.
yeah, we're doing
We
good.
know our stuff. Or I should say you do.
Well, somewhat. Um, but yeah, like I think like the most recent game I've played that has creeped me out is Alan Wake 2. Really enjoyed that. And like I said, it's less so about like jump scares and stuff, but the tone of it.
Mhm.
Like it's just creepy. Like it's just you feel on edge the entire time,
Yeah.
which um is great, but it also means like I couldn't play it as much as long as I wanted to because I just get too creeped out.
Right.
Plus the sound design in that game is like second to none. Like it's probably one of the best sounding games I've ever played. Um
Whoa.
yeah, and the bass, dude, the bass will rock you if you have a capable enough system.
Whoa.
If you do.
Speaking of not so horror things, or I mean, it's definitely not considered a horror movie, but I was actually watching 1917 yesterday,
Yeah.
and I don't know, the whole idea behind the fact that it's made in such a way where it's shot as if it's all one continuous shot,
Yes.
that to me is very horror like, or effectively builds tension, because a lot of times things are revealed as the shot goes, especially if it's a
Yeah.
side, a shot that's following him to the side, because you don't know what's on the outside of the shot. You don't know what's
Yeah.
about to come in to the shot. And, like, sure, there's like maybe like dead horses or dead people and bodies, just on the ground or whatever. But there's several, they keep running into several scenes where they've got to come out of something or fight something, or get out of a collapsing bunker, that kind of stuff. And like, yeah, it's very well done, um tension
Yeah.
throughout basically the entire movie, because the entire movie is just, I need to get from point A to point B, and there's several obstacles in the way.
Yeah.
People shooting at me, you know, and water and all kinds of stuff, and
Yeah.
having to sneak around and having people not find me or whatever.
Yeah. You
So,
talking about the oh, go ahead, sorry.
I mean, if you're looking for another kind of unorthodox thing to be scared by, or at least feel that anxiety and tension, then yeah. watch 1917 again.
There you go. There you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
you talking about the kind of one continuous take reminded me of a movie that I had to look up from 2011 called Silent House,
Oh.
with Elizabeth Olsen, and it was filmed to seem like it was one continuous take. It was 86
Mhm.
minutes long. They filmed it in like 10-minute segments and like carefully hid the cuts, so it's not one,
Mhm.
but like the whole movie, I honestly remember not caring for the movie that much, but there was that tension from it being all one shot, like one
Mhm.
continuous take, and there were like no breaks.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that does really is it simulates you being there in real time. Like you can't, just like the character, you can't get away from it. Whereas like a movie
Yeah.
where it like cuts to another like location or scene, you're like, okay, I don't know, I'm watching a movie, you know.
Right.
But like if
Right.
you start getting invested in this like one continuous take thing and you can't get away from it, like obviously you can pause it and go to the bathroom or whatever if you're watching at home. But
Mhm.
yeah, that just kind of reminded me of like a horror movie has like I'm sure other horror movies have done this, like tried to do the same thing. Um,
Mhm.
that kind of stuff's really hard to make effective.
Yeah.
Or hard to get right, I should say. It's not that it's not
Mhm.
effective, but there's a lot that needs to go right.
Yeah.
Um, and there was have you seen any of the like Haunting of Hill House or anything like that?
No, I
No.
haven't.
I think it's the 3rd episode, I might have to look that up, but, there is a shot in that episode where, because the part of the episode is meant to appear as one continuous take,
Mhm.
but I think it was like a record-breaking, like, 18-minute long Steadicam shot,
Oh, wow.
and it spanned 2 or 3 different locations. Obviously, they were sets, but, like, the way they blocked it and framed it, there were no hidden cuts in that like 18-minute section, but there were like
Yeah.
hidden cuts, like going from like this one section to the next,
Right.
before
Right.
it kind of kicked off. um and yeah, that there's like a thunderstorm happening, like all like everything that needed to go right. I think they did like maybe 2 or 3 different takes of it and they finally got it. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's worth looking at like the making of that even if you haven't seen it, because it kind of shows you how like all the prep and stuff into it. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Because that's the thing about long continuous shots is, yeah, there is so much planning involved.
mhm.
Oh, man, just the performances, the cinematography, the set design, everything has to accommodate long shots. Because yeah, I can't get enough of directors who love long shots,
Ugh.
just because I know how difficult they are to pull off.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
because I'll that's like the first thing that I notice if I'm watching something that I've never seen before. If there happens to be a scene that has like, even if it's just like an 8-minute scene or something with just one continuous shot, I'll look at my wife and go, "Did you notice that was one shot?" She'd be like, "No."
What are you talking about?
Yeah. It's like, "No, and I don't care either." It's like, "Man, but it's so hard." It's so hard to pull off. Yeah, but
Yeah, and when you see
I
it done
mean,
so well, like
yeah. With both of our backgrounds, being in filmmaking and stuff, we get it. I understand that I'm weird in that sense where that kind of stuff really just, makes me excited, but yeah.
just looking up what episode. Sorry, I'm listening. I'm just episode 6, Two Storms. That's the
Uh,
episode. I didn't think it was
Haunting of Hill House?
Haunting of Hill House. Yeah, you can probably
Yeah.
find a clip of it online. But I highly suggest watching the whole show if you're into that, especially because it's around Halloween. I think it's like 8 episodes. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, there's like so much going on. Um, yeah, it says the first 15 minutes and 38 minutes of this episode, excluding the beginning 1 minute and 20 seconds credit sequence, were done in one straight take.
Dang.
Yeah, they actually halted production for a month in order to prepare for the continuous long takes throughout this episode. That's
See?
wild. That
Great
is
production.
wild. Yeah, that's so crazy. I remember the Atmos on that episode too is exceptional. Like,
Mm.
yeah, so it's definitely worth.
That's is it a shot that takes place all in the same place, or is it a shot that's, like, constantly moving?
It's all it moving constantly. Not
See,
just that,
that's
there's multiple characters. So
mm,
like, not to give anything away, but the show is told through like a series of like present day and flashbacks.
mhm,
So like, not only are they moving throughout the scene, they're moving to a different location, but also going like basically like, okay, you have the actors playing the character in present day, and then the actors playing the character like in the past. So they're kind of going through
oh,
flashbacks at the same time, and they're changing locations. So they're going from like a funeral home to the house. Like all and so like obviously
wow.
the sets have to be built in such a way where you can do that.
Right.
Or you have to hide the cuts.
Mhm,
Um, but yeah, there's also like Mike Flanagan does have we were talking about it earlier with like M. Night Shyamalan. He is
mhm,
not afraid to just hold on an actor.
mhm.
There are scenes in Midnight Mass, like kind of monologues, where the camera doesn't cut for like probably 4 or 5 minutes, and this
Yeah.
character is literally giving a monologue, like they're saying, and it's like when as you're watching it, like I remember watching it because I watched that series I think 3 times now. The
Oh,
first
wow.
time I was so engrossed I didn't realize that it was all one shot,
Mhm,
and it's like kind of a dolly in or whatever. But I watched it again with my wife, and I was like, "Holy shit! Like they're not cutting." Like they
mhm.
just keep going. Like, and that to me is just such a like it kind of showcase like you have to be really at the top of your game as an actor to convey this emotion through the whole scene because you're like, I'm not gonna get any more coverage. This is it. Like this
Yeah.
is all I get this take to do this.
Mhm.
Um and it's also like comes down to the writing because if the writing's shit, no one's gonna care what you're saying,
Right.
you know? And people have said about Midnight Mass in particular is like that's kind of Mike Flanagan's whole because he wrote the show as well. That's kind of
Mhm.
like his like uh I can't magnum opus for
Yeah.
like long speeches. Like it was so
Right.
like well done that like he kind of has pared it back. But like all of his shows kind of have moments like that where it's just long drawn out shots of characters like kind of talking, or it might be exposition, or it might be something else.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I highly recommend his shows and also like his movies if you haven't seen his movies like Doctor Sleep and I
Oh.
can't remember the other. Gerald's Game was another one.
Yeah, I haven't seen
If you like a
either of those.
scantily clad Carla Cugino for most of the movie, chained to a bed.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah,
I'm gonna queue it up right now.
right now, honey, I got stuff going on tonight. I can't make dinner. Um, but yeah, it was it's yeah. I just we could talk about this for a super long time. We could yeah. But I think we've said enough. I think it's time to end because I'm hungry.
Hunting of
Um,
Hill House.
Haunting
Go
of Hill
watch it.
House. Haunting of Bly Manor is also good, but Haunting of Hill House to me is the better of the two.
Yeah.
They're not connected, other than it being the same director and a lot of the same actors, because that's what Mike
Oh.
Flanagan does. He'll reuse actor, kind of how American Horror Story will like reuse actors from like the first season, but now they're playing a completely different character.
Mm.
It's kind of
Yeah.
like that, but like I don't know. I've never found American Horror Story to be scary. It's just more like, hey, how like far can we push what we can do on cable type of thing,
Right.
with the sex stuff and all the crazy stuff. But yeah, highly recommend Haunting of Hill House, Haunting of Bly Manor. If you like slow burn type, you know, little 8, 9 episode arcs that
Yeah.
yeah. There's it's one of the few shows I will actually binge watch. Believe it or not.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, George isn't at home. Classic, classic. And on a Seinfeld note, well, I think I'm gonna wrap. We should probably maybe wrap it up here if you want to. You have any closing thoughts or concerns?
Um, yeah, support indie games and indie films. Support Terrifier 3. It's getting great reviews and making lots of money. And it
And it
was
sucks. No, I'm just kidding. I haven't seen
shot
it.
on a shoestring budget, just like the other Terrifier movies before it. But yeah, so support local cinemas, support just cinema, support filmmaking.
Support.
Yeah,
Just support.
yeah, support art. You
Yes.
know, don't support content
Non-art.
creation that
Don't
is
support us. Don't
right. Well, you can support those of us who are trying to, educate and entertain with our YouTube channels. But I'm talking about like scripted shows that are mainly just filling time.
That's it.
Support art.
Support
That's
all.
all I got.
Don't support Marvel movies. No, I'm just kidding. Martin Scorsese would be happy. He'd be like, finally,
Yeah.
my pictures can be in the cinema again.
Yes.
Just
Don't
talk
support
too
theme
fast.
park rides.
Yeah, don't go to theme parks. That's not how he talks at all, but just very fast.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't have anything to say other than watch some horror movies. If you're not into horror movies, ask yourself why you're not into horror movies.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't
What
like
are
being
you
scared.
doing with your
Completely
life?
viable. I don't have a problem with that. It's people like I don't like horror movies. Why? Because they're boring. Okay, which ones are you watching? Because you've not
Yeah.
watched good ones.
Yeah. If you're
Yeah.
bored by them, yeah, you're not watching the right ones.
Yeah. The right ones. Let the right one in. That's a good horror movie too. Not
Yeah.
the American version, Let Me In. Let the right one in. Watch that one.
Yeah,
That's
isn't it like Swedish or
Swedish.
something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Watch it with subtitles. Don't watch it dubbed.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
Never
Just watch it with
never
sub.
watch anything dubbed.
Yeah. That's just watch it with subtitles. Same with The Orphanage. If you're gonna watch The Orphanage, don't watch it in English. Watch it in Spanish with subtitles. Trust
Yeah.
me, it will. There's nothing like watching a horror movie where the characters are like, "What do you mean? Have you called her lately?"
Yeah.
It doesn't work. Doesn't work. But yeah, that's my. Thanks for coming to my TED talk. I'm gonna get off my soapbox now. That always turns into me getting on my soapbox and saying, "Don't do this."
Subtitles.
Subtitles. Yeah. I watch movies with subtitles on all the time because I don't know what the hell they're saying most of the time.
Yeah, so do I.
It's like, especially like a British horror movie. Like, oh, we're gonna go over
Hey,
there. They're gonna do what?
Bruv.
Bruv. I got that part. Have you heard John Boyega's actual accent? What's he saying? No, I'm just kidding.
Oh yeah.
Anyway,
Watch Attack the Block if you
that's
haven't already.
it's a great movie. And Nick Frost makes a cameo in it. So
Yes.
watch it.
Watch it now.
Watch it. Anyway, well, that's going to do it
Cue
for
it
us.
up.
Yeah, I think we're going to try to do a live stream next week. We might do the live tutorial thing, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
We might actually decide what it will be the 2 days before instead of a day before. So, hey. And yeah, obviously, if we didn't talk about your favorite horror movie, apologies. There are just too many to talk about. Again, we could go on. This could be a 10-hour live long stream and long stream. It could be a 10-hour
long stream.
Long live stream. Jesus. And we could never cover every single movie or horror game that we want to talk about. So just keep that in mind. We weren't doing it to be mean or anything like that.
Yeah.
Well, I
There's
wasn't.
too
I
much
can't
good
speak for
stuff
you.
out there.
There is, and that's true. That's very true. But yeah, until next time, yeah. Go watch some scary movies, guys.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Don't forget to subscribe and watch horror movies. Get scared and have your heartbeat racing because heartbeats elevated is what makes it cool.